That was a first. I've never had that.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning. I'm the Public Information Officer here, Marcel Bassett. Basically, we're just going to do a media briefing on service modifications. I emphasize the word modifications. Our main speaker is going to be Chief Don Hayes, who will come up next. Oh, and I do ask that if anybody has a question, you can do one follow-up, but let's try to have another reporter ask a question before you ask a secondary question. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming out to help us get the word out about what we're trying to do to serve our community better. Again, I'm Chief Don Hayes of the Alexandria Police Department, and starting on Wednesday, we went to what we call a modifications of calls for service. And what that really means is that we're still answering every call for service that we receive here at the police department. We're not going to stop doing that, but we had to modify that where we could again, have our resources better respond to the calls for service that were really needed, the emergency calls for service. And so what we did in doing that, we looked to identify our non-emergency calls for service where other entities within the city can respond to. We've also gone to identifying the non-emergency calls that really don't require an in-person response. We're increasing our telephone report writing unit where we have officers inside the building actually taking those reports over the phone. And we're also trying to get the community to understand that we have an online report writing feature on our website that they can go to and get us the same information that they would give us if we came up to their calls for service. What we really want them to understand is that in this process, again, we are not reducing our calls for service. We're going to respond to every call for service, sometimes just differently. We're modifying the way we do that. And we're doing that so that we can have our officers engage with the public more, get out of their cars, get into the community, begin to start those partnerships in community policing. But most of all, we want to make sure that we have the resources available to respond to those emergency calls for service when they happen, and they're not tied up on what we call a paper call. They can actually respond there in the appropriate manner to get the community the help that they actually need. But the main point we really want to stress is that we're doing everything we can and always will do to make sure that our communities are safe and that they are our #1 priority. And with that, I guess I'll open it up for questions.
Chief, good morning. So give us an example, if you would, of something that might have been considered by a civilian to be an emergency call in the past that you think other agencies will now be able to handle, or that you'll hand off to them through the call. And just as part of that question, what percentage of the calls that you get are considered by you to be non-emergency? So if you give me an example and tell me what the percentage would be that you might be able to divert to other agencies.
Okay, I would use one like a fire call, where someone would call in and say that an individual has fallen down, off the sidewalk, and fire is responding out there, and they would go to the call. We would normally go out there also, to assist. But if fire is already responding to the call and they get there and say, look, we're not needed, we're not going to be going out there. So that would be like, again, for us, a non-emergency call because fire is already on the call for service. A non-emergency call for service basically falls into the category of where there's no public threat, there's no public danger out there. An incident that occurred earlier, you wake up in the morning and you find out that your car had been broken into, there are no suspects, there's nothing out there, and we would normally send an officer out there to take that report. Now we can just have that person, when they call in, go to our telephone report writing, and that information will be, again, still reported, and followed up on by an investigator.
And the percentage of calls that you had that as part of
Yeah, I don't have that number right now, but I can get that back with you. Yes.
What are you using some metrics to see how this works after it's been in place for a while, and do you expect it to go back to normal if you get your manpower levels back up to where they should be?
Yeah, we're looking to basically evaluate this on a monthly basis to make sure that we're anything we have to tweak, that we will, to make sure that the calls for service are being answered in the appropriate manner. So we will always have that mechanism in place. And when we get our staffing back, which will hopefully will be sooner than later, we will go back to looking at how we can again respond to the community's calls for service. Yes.
Chief, good morning. Can you talk about how many officers you're authorized to have and how many you have right now and what that recruitment process is going to look like?
Sure. Right now, we're authorized 311 sworn officers. Currently, as of May 1st, we were down 20 officers. But more than that, we also have 48 officers in what we call restricted duty or FMLA, so which means they're not available for the street. So actually, out of that 311, we only have 243 officers available to, again, put on the street and to go to those calls for service. Our recruiting effort is robust, we like to call that. I used to use the word robust, because we're actually going out into the neighborhoods, we're going out to military bases, we're going out anywhere we can to let people know that we need qualified candidates to come and join the Alexandria Police Department. And I like to stress the word qualified, because we got to make sure that they are able to do the job, but they are also fit the criteria that we have to be a police officer.
How are you doing on the multi-language part of it?
On the multi-language, we are doing, I would say, better than, I'm not gonna say most, but we're doing well. We have a lot of Spanish-speaking officers, we have Aramaic-speaking officers, and we also have the language bank that we use. And we also have what we call a volunteer translator, where they come and they ride with the officers and they help us translate in the different languages that we don't have. Yes.
Suppose it's like an auto accident, property damage only, and you might need a report number for insurance purposes and things like that. Would you send an officer then, or is it a case by case?
Well, I would say on those situations, it'll be a case-by-case basis, because again, if we have the staffing available and the officers there, of course, we would do that. But a lot of times, when we don't have the staffing, because they're tied up on other calls for service, we will make sure that the people exchange the proper information, and again, and get all the things they need, and then they can still also have that information transferred through our report writing system. Again, as long as there's no one injured. Yes.
What kind of training has this involved on behalf of your dispatchers? It seems to me they're going to, carry a pretty big weight on this in explaining to civilians what's going to happen. So what's happened in terms of retraining them, and how are they going to be dealing with this?
Well, we've had an initial consultation with them. Acting Captain Ballantyne has met with them to answer any questions they might have, and then also to make sure that they have a protocol or a triage that they can be able to look at the calls for service and send them to the right person. But just in case that doesn't work, our sergeants and watch commanders are monitoring the calls for service, and they will also intervene or make the phone calls to the people to make sure that the calls are being routed into the appropriate people. Yes.
Is there going to be, or do you anticipate that there will be an impact on response times if you have all these people reporting, whether it's property theft or maybe fraud, online, through the phone? What can the community kind of expect as far as a response to those reports?
I think they're going to get a better response or a quicker response, because as of right now, when we have to send a body out there to that call for service, sometimes it could take an hour because of, again, the calls for service and because of our staffing. But this way, we now have the staffing available in-house. The ones I just talked about, the 48 people who were on restricted duty and all that, so they're now going to be a part of our telephone report writing unit to be able to take those calls for service right over the phone immediately, as opposed to them waiting for an officer to respond out there to their location.
Chief, after the stabbing at the Bradley shopping center, what is your plan to address safety concerns at the shopping center?
We already have officers assigned out there to the shopping center right now. We're working with the school system to make sure that we have the appropriate safety in the schools and outside the schools. And we also have what is called a detail officer. The shopping center is actually paying for officers to be at that shopping center during this time.
And one more question. What specific steps are you taking to prevent the repeat of this accident?
Can we stick to the modification topic? Sorry.
Well, and I can answer that question. Go ahead. What I just told you, we are increased presence out there, again, working with the schools to make sure that, again, we're doing everything we can to make sure that the students and the customers and the public are safe when they're at that shopping center.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, I do have one more question on that.
Sure.
On that topic, though, I mean, we know the arrest has been made in connection with the homicide.
Mhm.
What's your expectation about whether more arrests are forthcoming? And do you have a sense of how many other arrests might take place as you continue your investigation?
Well, I guess you answered your question. The case is still under investigation, so I really can't talk too much about that. I can just tell you what we've been doing, and the men and women of the Alexandria Police Department have been working diligently. That's why they were able to make the arrest so fast. I think our main focus now is letting the community know that we are out there, we're doing our job, and that it's still a safe community for them to work in, to work and play in.
But would you say to the community, or would you be able to assure the community that other arrests are forthcoming?
I won't want to say that again. It's still an investigation, and I don't want to get into the investigation part of it. Yes.
Can you offer any insight as to why you guys are seeing a staffing shortage? I know you're not the only department, but is there a specific reason, these retirements, resignations? Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's still some of this stems from the George Floyd situation where nationwide, police is not looked at as being a favorable occupation right now. And we have to change that image. We have to get people to understand that we can't be painted with a broad brush because of some things that some other agencies might do. We want to be judged on our own merit, and we are a good police department. I would say we're a great police department, but I don't want my ego to get in my way. But I think that our record speaks for itself as far as how we have always been there for the community. We work with the community. We have a great working relationship with the community. And we need men and women, good men and women, to understand this is a noble profession, and we need the help in order for us to continue into what I call a safe society. It's not just the police department's job to make sure that the communities are safe. It's everybody's job. And I believe that, I like to steal the phrase, is that we are necessary, but we're not sufficient to keep the entire community safe. It's a partnership with our community members, with our faith-based organizations, with everyone, to realize that we want a specific quality of life in our particular neighborhood, and we have to work together to get it. So I think that process from George Floyd, some of the things that we have actually done to make our profession not as attractive as it could be, and we got to work to fix that image and get people to understand that we took an oath to protect and serve all people, and that's what we do at the Alexandria Police Department.
Can you say whether people are leaving the profession altogether or going to other departments? Have you been able to track that?
Well, I can give you a good example. We had at least 5 leave within the past 2 weeks. One went to another agency, one retired, 2 are getting out of the profession altogether, and I forget what the last person was doing. So it's a mix. A lot of them are not leaving to go to other agencies. A lot of them are just leaving because they want to try something different. I think we have to realize that our profession has changed. I think the days of people becoming police officers and working 25 and 30 years might not be what people are looking for today. And they're looking to do this for a while, and then they're looking to do something else. So we have to be able to adapt to that. And while the people are here, make sure that they have the best experience they can, and hopefully they might want to stay the 20 and 30 years. But if not, make sure that we're doing the things we have to do to retain and recruit enough good people to fill the vacancies when they leave.
Can you speak to the mental aspect of, what policing is now?
Yes, it's challenging. The mental aspect is definitely challenging. Again, I came on 40 years ago, and I couldn't imagine going through some of the calls for service that our officers go to today, dealing with the amount of mental crisis calls for service that they have, suicide calls that we're going on, just a lot of stress, and we have to make sure that our officers are taken care of from a mental health standpoint. And that's why we have a wellness program here where we kind of try to get them to eat the right things, exercise, take the time off. We have quiet room where on their break they can come here and go into the quiet room and just kind of relax to get themselves together, because it's a very stressful occupation, you know, and again, things have changed.
Are you worried at all that the announcement of the modifications might give some criminals a little bit more confidence that they're not gonna get caught, like, for minor things like, you know, car break-ins, that sort of thing?
No, I hope it's just the opposite, because now the officers won't be tied up taking those calls for service. They'll actually be out there patrolling in those neighborhoods, and they can actually, they'll be more visible, and they'll be able to see things happening. And so it should increase our ability to catch them when they're doing something wrong. Yes?
Chief, related to the carjacking that happened 2 weeks ago at a gas station, I know 3 people were charged in that carjacking where it appeared that the driver shot at the carjacking suspects and 1 was killed. Did you have anything new on that investigation? Is there anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay, I know there were 5 people involved, you said, and 3 were charged. We were just wondering if there was any.
Not at this time.
Okay.
We're still in investigation.
Just want to thank everybody.
No, I want to thank everybody. Really, I really want to thank you all because I believe that, talking about those partnerships, one of the partnerships we got to have is with the media. We got to be transparent with you all. We got to let you all know what we're trying to do and what we are doing so that you can get the correct information out to the people, because again, you have a very broad base and we need you. You're a part of our partnership. So anything that we can do to help that, please let us know. We want to work with you.
You said you're looking for more officers.
Yeah, you want to join?
You said you're looking for more officers. Where can people go to if they're interested in becoming one? Give
Oh.
us the info on that real quick.
They can go to our website, right on the website, and also they can contact Shakita Warren. You know her number?
Got to keep, sorry.
Thank you for that question.
So we got 6161.
What? Okay, it's 703-746-6164.
Is there an age limit asking for a friend?
There is no age limit. There's no age discrimination. We would love to have you. All you gotta do is pass the academy, come on out, and look, I tell you, I'll work with anybody who wants to do this job. It's a great occupation. It's a great place to be. No, thank you all, really. I mean that. All right.